Welcome back and hello if you are new. So thank you so much for tuning in for this final episode of my albums of the decade. Now, these 5 choices are without a doubt all real kind of luminaries in their own genre and have created absolute masterpieces, but also have reverberations throughout their subgenre that have been felt to many other bands. Now, whereas Carcass may have had the best comeback album ever, you would have never imagined that Job for a Cowboy would come back and create possibly one of the best technical death metal albums of the decade. Sun Eater is the beautiful flourishing from the deathcore maestros that Job for a Cowboy started out as into the fully fledged technical death metal beast that they had become. Nick Shenzielos's wandering bass lines reminded us of Steve DiGiorgio. Tony Sanacandro's piercing leads, a guest appearance of Corpse Grinder, who's really giving Johnny Davey a run for his money. But even then, I think Johnny Davey is such a versatile vocalist when it comes to death metal. And I think that it really is, it's somewhat of an underdog because I've seen quite a lot of decade lists and it's never really mentioned. The level of complexity that is on Sun Eater is absolutely unparalleled. I think this is potentially one of the smartest, most innovative, and most importantly, engaging concept albums I've ever heard. So you have multiple layers throughout this record, and each of the names of the tracks represents this kind of layer as we go deeper into the ocean. So when we're in Pelagial, everything's quite nice, and you can see those beautiful kind of blue hues that you would see, like on a crystal clear water surface. But then when we get to Benthic, it's this crushing post-metal sound. When it comes to the vocals, there's yet another layer of concept on here, which is the idea of going from, normality to complete insanity the lower we get down the record. It works on a philosophical, sonic and visual level to represent a really quite grand idea that would often be quite difficult to put into something with such little words. But I think that Pelagial is a perfect representation of the ocean's scope and their ambition. I remember the first time I listened to Magma, and it really made me quite puzzled. Gojira were always known for quite a long album, quite technically demanding, and overall very metallic. But I thought Magma was none of this. The album opens with The Shooting Star and finishes with Liberation, 2 songs which really didn't quite fit the Gojira mould. But this is the point, and it has always been the point of Gojira, is that it says so much by saying so little. This was the album that would take Gojira from having the potential to become superstars to becoming one of the biggest bands in 2019, and really of this decade. I think it's also worth mentioning that it is a perfect manifestation for the exorcism of grief that the Duplantier brothers felt after their mother's passing, and you can really feel the emotional ties on this record, and that's potentially one of the reasons that it is such a unique album, and particularly in Gojira's canon. So it'll be really interesting to see where the band go from here. It's the album of a generation and the crowning achievement of Gojira, and merely a stepping stone towards their inevitable global domination. Language single-handedly changed the band. A big change in this was Michael Lessard's inclusion in the band. but his vocal take, everything about it really created a brand new perception of what the Contortionist would be. And language made the Contortionist one of the most important bands in modern prog. Really, if you think about the Contortionist sound, there is no equal. There is no other person who sounds like this in the modern day. It's a record which is, made up of multiple tracks but works seamlessly, flowing into one another. Musically, it's like being on one individual path, and although you're taking this path, there are so many different visions that you can see above you that every time I listen to it, there's always something new to discover, something to listen to, something to, really understand even more about this fantastic album. Even though it is this kind of, individual piece of music which is stuck in time, each time sounds like something completely new and refreshing. This is my album of the decade. The album I've gone back to more than anything on this list. The album that I go to when I kind of don't really know what to listen to, when I just kind of want a comfort blanket, and it is without a doubt Steven Wilson's The Raven That Refused to Sing.
The watchmaker works all day and long into the night. He pieces things together despite his failing sight.
It's an album that is weirdly as structured as it is free. And this is partially down to the absolutely fantastic cast that are behind it. And the all-star cast is made up of Nick Beggs, Adam Holzman, Guthrie Govan, Marco Miniman, some appearances of flute by Theo Travis, and of course the man himself, Steven Wilson. And it's mainly down to the fact that all of these players are absolutely incredible. They could jump on a track and make it instantly their own, but put them all together and they're each allowed their own section in the spotlight. But I think it's probably most important to embrace the sense of minimalism which is on The Raven That Refused to Sing as well. To paraphrase Guthrie Govan, it's not about how many notes you play, it's about how you play the ones you do. Wilson's voice acts as a warm comfort blanket on the likes of Luminol, but then can also be responsible for some of the most emotional tracks I've ever heard. The album is also based around ghost stories and has that sort of sense of kind of twilight about it and a slight, almost spookiness, but not without being scary, but more in a philosophical kind of way. And it's very much looking in on other people's lives and kind of seeing these stories unfold, which I love the most. For example, Luminol deals with the idea of a busker who everyone ignores and pretty much could be seen as a ghost. And the watchmaker is a man who was so obsessed by time that he never actually spent any himself. And the man's wife died and essentially comes back to haunt him. The Raven That Refused to Sing looks at so many different facets of sadness within life. There's grief, isolation, rumination, loss. And these are all elements that make up such a beautiful tapestry on The Raven That Refused to Sing. And this is the reason that it is my album of the decade. So, that's it. That's your lot. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments section and we can have a good chat. I'm going to be basically wrapping up in the next 2 videos. So I'll be doing my albums of 2019 in 2 parts as you guys requested. So take care and I'll see you guys next week for the beginning of the end of 2019. Take care, friends.